Welcome to our session, Intro to Apple's Augmented Reality Tools, Reality Converter and Reality Composer, presented by Roxana Nagy. Roxana is a Romanian mobile developer based in Dubai with a passion for augmented reality. She started coding when she was 13 years old, and so far she has been part of the development team of over 20 apps. As a director of augmented reality at Monstarlab, she helps top companies around the world to create AR strategies and build innovative projects with the use of emerging technologies. She is involved in the tech community, both online and offline at local events. As an advocate for women in tech, Roxana is encouraging other girls to join the tech world. Thank you, Roxana, for being here today and everyone for joining this session. We are very excited to learn from you. One thing to point out that you can post your questions in the chat, and at the end we will have some time to answer any questions you might have. Roxana, whenever you're ready,
All right, thank you for the introduction, and thanks for inviting me to this. I think it's really great, and I always love being part of all the events organized by Women Who Code. So, okay, let me just share my screen, and we will have a fun session today. Before I actually go and do some live demos of those tools, I just want to take you through some key concepts so you understand where you kind of want to get started with this. So let me kind of go into a presentation mode here. So yes, welcome to my talk, Intro to Apple's Augmented Reality Tools, more specifically Reality Converter and Reality Composer. I really love talking about those two tools because a lot of times I talk with iOS developers about augmented reality experiences, and a lot of them might be a little bit intimidated to get into AR. And I would say that's absolutely not the case. It's quite easy and straightforward, and I hope this session will kind of give you that initial inspiration and motivation to go try it out. This is super simple. At the end of this session, we'll be able to do like a quick AR experience, like 5 minutes. So I hope that is just like, the initial spark that will maybe get you more interested in this. And then, of course, we'll dive more into more complex features of everything Apple is doing with AR. And of course, a very big question, are we going to see any AR, VR headsets coming soon? There's rumors, and, we had them for a lot of years, and now they're getting more and more common, and a lot of more people are talking about it. And I think the whole, pandemic as well, and the hype around the metaverse has really prompted a lot of companies to get back into creating headsets for AR and VR, which I think is great. We never know with Apple, so we'll just have to wait, but I'm sure that sometime next year we'll be able to see something. I would tend to say it will not be necessarily something consumer ready, more maybe like a developer kit. We'll have to see. But in any case, I'm really curious to see Apple's approach on the headset. And if you want, I linked here a page from Mac Rumors. If you want to just always keep on up to date with the latest rumors, you can check this out, and I'll share my presentation afterwards with all the links if you want to go and dive more into them. So I want to kind of take you through some of the key things you should know if you want to get started with AR, especially if you want to start doing AR experiences without even opening up Xcode. You'll see that everything we do today is with 0 lines of code, so that I think it's really good. It's very beginner friendly, and AR Quick Look is really good in assisting with that. So Apple, and maybe you already tried this out and you've seen what it does, but if you haven't, just to summarize it, AR Quick Look is a way to really start having very powerful augmented reality experiences with user interactions like moving, scaling up the object, people occlusion, which is a great feature from Apple, sharing of the model. All of this is supported out of the box. So all you have to provide is that model, and you'll be able to already have an experience, in a few minutes, as I mentioned. There are 2 input formats you can put into this AR Quick Look. I'll talk a bit about both of them, but just to kind of say, we have USDZ and .reality. .reality is a file format you will export from Reality Composer. So I think that's just something to keep in mind. If you want to test out, if you want to see how this AR Quick Looks works and exactly what you get out of it, I also linked here kind of like a quick gallery from Apple where you can test out different models they've put together. The AR view, but what is really cool is that you also have the object view. So you can view it in this kind of isolated way. And you can kind of rotate it and just inspect the model further if you need to. And a final note to say about AR Quick Look is that this can be used on web experiences as well, which is great. It's really good for e-commerce. You can have this file format, the USDZ, embedded in your website. So just to keep in mind, because this is not, it goes beyond native iOS. It actually goes to the web, of course. Not supported in all the browsers and all the devices, but it's still something good to look into. And this is something you will use if you kind of want to do like basic experiences. Of course, if you want to do something much more complex, you'll have to get into coding and more complex feature. And I wanted to do like also just a quick note of what is actually new this year for this AR Quick Look. This was added as an improvement at this year's WWDC. There were a few developers who kind of said that they don't really understand why, especially when you would have white models, they would kind of still look grayish. Maybe the lighting wasn't really there. So they actually listened to the feedback and they've improved the lighting. So now you can see in those two examples how it used to be before, like the classic one and the new one. So you can already see from those screenshots that the new one is brighter. It has enhanced contrast. It's even more like sharper. So I think that's really, really great. And there's multiple ways you can, when you're working with USDZ files, there's multiple ways you can say if you want the classic light or if you want the new light. One would be to specify directly in the USDZ model, but we won't get into that. I think that's more like something for 3D content creators, but I will show you how you can switch between those two when you use a reality converter. And I mentioned the file format, USDZ. So just very quickly, something you should know, not getting into too many details about this, but the technology behind it is called USD. That comes from Universal Scene Description. This is not a file format created by Apple. It's actually developed by Pixar. So if you know, they have good experience with animated movies and so on. And this file format has a focus on speed, scalability, and collaboration. And it's great, and Apple is behind it. So they encourage more and more developers to use this as the preferred 3D file format. And USDZ is just a distribution format for USD. So this is like a single file. It's compact. You can share it. It's really nice to work with USDZ. And just a few quick facts about Reality Converter, as I mentioned it. This is currently in the beta version, but I think it's working quite well, and I've been using it quite a few times. But the idea behind it, as the name says it, you would use this to convert, view, and customize. Quite limited in the customization part, but you can also customize your 3D objects. And the reason for having this tool is that USDZ is still a new file format. It came out quite a few years ago, but it's still, they didn't want people to be blocked by the fact that they might already have their models in other file formats like OBJ or GOTF. So just to make it as easy as possible to create this tool. So all you have to do is just do a drag and drop into this tool and it will convert it to USDZ. You have a few options that you can do in this tool that I'll walk you through. And just a note to kind of say that before we had this tool, there was, and there still is, USDZ Python-based tools. So this is something you would run on your terminal, and you can generate, validate, inspect files. I would say if you are interested, go check it out, because there are some options still in this tool that you don't have with Reality Converter. But if you just want to do like a straightforward conversion, you can just use this one. I think it's really nice. And you can download this on Apple's developer downloads page. And again, very top level information about how this works. But essentially, when you have a 3D model, you have a geometry for that model, and then you might have some textures. So maybe you have already heard about objects in the FBX, OBJ, GLTF file formats. Those are supported by Reality Converter, and I would say are the most common ones. And as I mentioned, some of those might have textures as well, which are in the format of a picture, like PNG or JPEG. And what you'll do is just take all this kind of files you have for an object and drag and drop them into Reality Converter. And this Reality Converter will essentially export out just one file for you to use, the USDZ file. And Reality Composer, I think this is really, really good. It's again, when you try to think of AR experiences and 3D modeling and all of this, it might seem complicated and intimidating. And I tried doing some courses with Blender, which is great, learned some basic things, but there's just so many things happening in there, and it just you don't really want to get that deep into it, especially if you're a developer who don't really want to learn that much about 3D content creation. You just want to learn about building the experiences, and perhaps you'll have some other people doing the models for you, or you might even get them from the internet. So this one, essentially what it does, you can do some prototypes, you can even do some content for your experiences. And there's two ways to use this, like what you do in this. Either you can further integrate it into Xcode and do some more coding and do some more customization. Or if you want to keep it simple and like basic applications, you can export it to AR Quick Look. It has a built-in AR library that's really great. So you can already have something to get started. There's something called live linking, which I think is really, really great. So what this does is, as you develop AR experiences, it's much more comfortable to do it on your laptop, right? But you can really test their experiences on a laptop. So what they've done, they created kind of like an application, Reality Composer, as well for iOS and iPadOS. So you'll be able from your laptop to do a live link to your device, and you'll be able to preview whatever you've built, and you'll even be able to make changes on your device, save it, link it back to your laptop, and just continue your flow. So I think it's something that, it makes sense when you're developing AR experiences to have this very seamless tool to build how it's comfortable to test it, send it back, and just have this back and forth flow. Animation and spatial audio, it's also supported. As I mentioned, if you want to download it on your device, it's available on the App Store. And if you want to use it on your MacBook, it's coming packed with your Xcode. So if you already have Xcode installed, you also have this, and you can access it either from Xcode by going to Open Developer Tools, and you'll have it in there, or as I usually do, just do like a quick search, spotlight search on my Mac, and just open it from there. And just a final note, kind of to give you that good overview of everything we're talking about and everything we're doing, is just a quick look over what types of AR experiences you can do. And all of this you can build with Reality Composer. So you can see, you're not really limited with what you can do with Reality Composer. There is one type of anchor you can really build for in Reality Composer, and that's a location anchor. But just to go through them, horizontal, I'm sure everybody knows this. You'll use it for a tabletop or like on your floor. A good example is the IKEA app, where you're able to place perhaps a couch on in your space. Then we have vertical experiences. So this is something you would think of putting on a wall or any kind of vertical surfaces. Here is just good to note that try to be careful when we're building experiences that would attach to a wall, because a lot of times we have to deal with white, featureless surfaces, which are not really great for experiences, because your camera needs to really detect points and really understand the scene, and it doesn't really work well with white surfaces. So just something to keep in mind. And then images, this is great. You can just attach something to an image, poster, a book. Maybe you want to do like a business card, AR enabled business card. A really funny example that I also showed here. I believe it was Burger King they were asking you to kind of detect another competitor's poster, and they will kind of overlay that with like a burning flame, and then kind of replace the original ad. So that was a bit of a funny experience. And then face anchors. I'm sure everybody know here is aware of AR face filters, and you can do that here as well. And one that is not that common and talked about would be the object anchor. And what you can do is you can get a model, you can scan it. If you go on the Apple's website, you're able to download a project and kind of like a companion app you can use to scan a specific object. It will give you a file and you'll load that up, so you'll be able to detect that specific project, that specific object, and perhaps overlay some sort of AR experience. So maybe in this case, as you have this cute little animal here, once you detect it with your camera, maybe you'll put like a hat on or something like that. So this is really interesting anchor and type of experience as well. You can just also kind of to give you a bit of inspiration of what you can build. And I'll share a link of resources as well after this session. But now I'll just dive into actually using those tools and showing you what you can do with them. And I will link everything if you want to download all of those tools. And the first thing we'll look into is a reality converter. So I'll just open this up. After you download it, you're able to just open it, and it will work out of the box for some specific models, file types. For some others, it won't work. So for example, I believe it's FBX. I have some screenshots. Yes. So for FBX, when you install Reality Converter, it's not going to work. You need to go and download some additional things. But essentially, if you're trying to convert an FBX file, it's going to give you a message. It's going to give you a download link. So you can just go in there and download what you need. So Reality Converter will guide you through this. But today we will test out with some cute little models that I found on Sketchfab. And also kind of a tip for you if you want to do some AR experiences, and of course you don't want to pay to get the models done, or you don't want to do the models yourself. I like to use Sketchfab. You can come in here and find free models you can use for experiences. So a lot of times what I do, I just go in here and just like scroll, and when I find something that is interesting, I have a look at it, see if it's free, if I can use it, what kind of license it has. But if it's like creative learning experiences, it's usually fine to use. One thing for you to keep in mind is when you are looking at a model, is to have a look over here at the triangles and vertices. Try to keep them under 100,000 because if it's over that, it might be a little bit difficult to load your models. But I already picked up 2 examples. So this is like a dancing UFO, or what you might call it. And then also kind of like a little robot in here. I picked those 2 different ones because this one has an animation, and I just wanted to show you some of the things that you have in addition by having an animated model and then just a static model. All right, so what I'll do now is just, you see, I downloaded the files from Sketchfab and I unzipped them, and essentially I ended up with those 2 folders. It's important to track the whole folder. Do not open up the folder and try to, drag and drop just the GLTF or, put them all together. I think that's just the best way to do it. And I'll drag and drop this UFO as well. And right, so let's have a look what we have here. Again, this is pretty simple tool you can use, but there are some key things you should keep in mind. You see me, I just drag and drop the models in, and that was pretty easy. Nothing, too crazy about it. But if you have a look at the tool, essentially you can hide and show the models. So every time you add your models, you'll be able to see all of them here. It's good that you can have multiple models and work on multiple things at once, because then you can just export all of them as well at the same time. And what would be interesting, it's also here you have a share button. So what I like to do when I open up, so let's say I want to convert a file. Before I even take it to Reality Composer, before I do anything with it, I like to airdrop it on my phone, because this will allow me to test it to see, is it, does it look how I expected? Was the conversion really successful? Is it the right size? And connected to the size, there's something that I think it's really important for you to keep in mind is here the base units. Sometimes when you download something from the internet, or maybe not just download it, but if you receive a model and you see that it's maybe 100 times bigger than you would expect, the base units might not be the correct ones. So you can actually adjust it here. And I'll do that for my model here as well. Another easy way to check if the base units is what you expect is if you go in here, and let's say you want to see the grid. This will give you an understanding of how big the model is. Based on this, in the corner, you'll see that a small line here, it's 0.5 meters, and a big, like a whole big square is 2.5 meters. So this gives you an understanding of how big the model is. And if I change this, it will also change the base units. So we'll keep it to centimeters. If you want to add some copyright information, you can do it from here. But to go back to this menu that I opened up here, what you can see is different types of, they're called IBL. So it's like image-based lighting. It allows you to kind of test out how your model will look into different kind of light conditions. And you can check which ones you want to test out from here. We'll keep it to default. You saw that you have the option to show and hide the grid. This can be useful in many different scenarios. You can show the environment if you want to, and then you can change the exposure, but I don't really ever do changes to the exposure from here. And you have here also the materials. So, I mean, you can change it from here, but I wouldn't really think in a normal workflow you would do changes here. You'd probably do it in a different, maybe in the tool you use to create this model. But in any case, sometimes it might be useful to have it here. I would say maybe it's even useful to have it as a debug tool. So if something doesn't look right, maybe you can look at the materials, and if you see that maybe something is missing that you would expect it to be, maybe that's a good debugging mode. And we talked about the classic lighting and the normal lighting, and you can also see that here as an asset environment option. So if I switch it to the classic one, you can already see the difference. So you see that the classic one was kind of darker, like it didn't have the same brightness. So I'm sure this is gonna really impact a lot of AR Quick Look and USDZ experiences. That's it's really cool they added this one. So that's pretty much what you have in here. You can switch between the models. There's one option here if you want to like reframe. So you have this viewport and maybe, I don't know, you move around and you lost your way and you just want to get back to your model. You can use this button over here. And as I mentioned, this model doesn't have an animation and the UFO does. And you can see the difference is here in those buttons. So if it has an animation, you'll also be able to start, pause, or stop an animation if you want to. So this is what we have here. So now let's get into actually exporting this. So what you have to do is go to your file, export. And another new thing they added this year is kind of an option to compress the textures. So this is, if you do it uncompressed, let's save it in both. So you can see the difference in the size of the file, which I think is really good. So we'll save it uncompressed, and we'll also export it as compressed. So bring those over here, and we can have a look. So this is the uncompressed one. So if you look at the information about this is 17 in the size, and if you open the compressed one, it's 7. So that's less than half, which you have to remember when you're building AI experiences. That's really important. Saving that amount of space, it's really, really important, because when you are developing AI experiences, if you're packing them into actual projects, you have limitations on the size you can put in. So it's always good to be mindful of the size of your models. Okay, so let's get into, now that we have this model here exported. So now we have it in USDZ, and now we can use it in Reality Composer, because Reality Composer only accepts USDZ file formats. So I'll just close this one. Okay, we'll not export that. So this is Reality Composer. As I mentioned, you can open this one from Xcode, and this is what you'll get when you open it up. So you'll see like an empty project. And what we can do now, and on the right here, on the Properties tab, you can see that I already selected to have an horizontal anchor type. This is something you get prompted right when you open Reality Composer. If you want to change it later on, you can see you can do it from here. So we can kind of keep it to horizontal for now, but just for you to know that you can pick what kind of experience you want to build. And what I'll do, I'll copy in the compressed USDZ file. Okay, so I will zoom in a bit because it's very small, and we'll adjust it a little bit in the size in a minute as well. But to have a look over what is happening here, right? So on this top section here, we have a button saying scenes, which will show and hide your list of scenes. If you're doing more complex experiences, you might want to have different scenes. You might need to switch between scenes if your experience, if you need to do that within your experience. You have a frame, which we've seen in Reality Composer as well. If you are losing your way around here and just want to frame the scene, you can do that easily. We have a button which is called Snap. I'll leave this on for now, and I'll show you in a bit exactly what that does. But the fun part would be maybe to have a look at the library that I also mentioned. So that is accessible through the Add button over here on the top. So here, if you have a look, of course, you have right at the top, you have what you imported, but then you have a bunch of models that Apple is giving us, just something you want to check out if you want to do some test experiences. And there's something very interesting about, the models and the way USDZ files are created, is that you'll be able to change specific properties depending on the model. And we'll add a few to showcase that. So let's have a look at what we can add. We can just add a cube here. We can add a spiral. Frame. I'll add some more interesting ones as well. So let's have a look over this list. Let's do some food. We'll do the cupcake. Let's have some furniture. Okay, we'll get this chair. And there's another interesting one called frame. Let's have a look at this one. And there's also one that I just discovered recently, storage, which I thought is really cool. So I'll put this one in here as well. Oh, that's quite big. That's fine. So let's start with this one, if it's that big. So when you select it, You can have a look here on the right side. There's something called properties. And here you'll have a bunch of things you can do. So as you select your model, you'll see that there are some kind of arrows and circles highlighted. And this allows you to change the location of your object, the size of your object, and even rotate it if you want. So now I have the green one selected. So if I just go up and drag it down, this will change the location on the y-axis. If I click the red one, it will change it on the x-axis. And if I click the blue one, just drag and drop, I can change it on the z-axis. And the circles are used to, as I mentioned, maybe to scale up and down your model. And you can also rotate it if you wish. And you can see when I'm rotating, it goes by 15 degrees at once. And that's because I have the snap option selected. If I deselect that, it will just go degree by degree. So it depends on you and what you and how you want to build your experiences. But what is really cool here is, of course, we have the transform side here, which can do exactly what we've done now with the use of UI. We can change the position, the rotation, the scale. But the interesting part is the look. So this is something that is specific to this model. And actually, you can go and change how many rows we want to have in this shelf, how many columns, the width of one of those buckets, which I think is really cool. So you see, it's kind of like dynamic way to edit things. So it's not static, which I think is really fun. And that's why I think with a lot of the models you already have in here, you can do quite a few things. Then we have the chair. So you can see here, what is cool about this one is that we have different styles. So we have realistic, we have stylized, we have iconic. So you can go and do that as well. Let's have a look at the frame one that I mentioned. Here you see you have the special just frame it nicer. But here you can select an image. Let's import one. Let's import this one. So you can see that that was based on the image I uploaded. You can select the different styles you would want your frame to be. It can be golden. You can change the size. You can do, again, a lot of customizations on your model, which is really cool. Same with the cupcake here. We can make it look realistic. The cube, I think this is this is cool because you can choose between different types of material. You can change the width, the height. So that's why I'm saying you can kind of build up your even build up your models for more basic models. And the spring, which can change the diameter, the height. So there's a lot of customizations for all of them, which I think is really cool. And you can change colors, you can do a bunch of stuff. So I would encourage you to go and just have a look at what is available there. And also, there's something called scene physics. So I'll just get a basketball so we can have a look at that. But this one, if you just start your scene, so if you want to start your experience, you would play the play button over here. It will do nothing, right? Because it doesn't really participate in physics. So if you activate this and you put in like dynamic, and let's say you wanted to have like a kind of mimic the material of a rubber, you can do that. So if I play now the scene, it will just kind of mimic the physics of that. So that was kind of like an overview of what kind of things you can do with the models. So let's quickly get to our UFO here. I'm also running out of time, but let's have a look at this one. So one other thing interesting to do with your experiences is behaviors. I think that's a really cool part of Reality Composer. So you can open it up from here. There's a button called behaviors, and here you can create your own behaviors. If you have the plus buttons, there's some pre-created ones by Apple. So let's click on one of them. Let's say the wait and show. And here you'll be able to see trigger, action sequence, and the trigger is essentially what triggers that action. For this specific one, it will be scene start. So when you start the scene, it will already trigger this one. And then what happens is what is defined in the action sequence. So it's going to say hide. We need to choose what object is affected by this. So I just did that. The duration, and again, also the affected object, which is selected. So now if I want, I can test out the action sequence directly from here. So we'll kind of do that animation. But if you want to test it like the whole thing, so if you add multiple behaviors, you want to test everything together, you would want to go and play, press the play button over here. Let's also do like a custom one. So if you want to do a custom one, and you can also go and rename your behaviors, which is always good to be organized. So we're adding a custom behavior over here. So the trigger would be, let's say on tap, the object is selected. We wanted to emphasize, for example. Again, make sure the object is selected. And we can test out what this will do. This will kind of like do an emphasize, a pop, but there's a few things you can do here. Maybe let's say float would make sense for this object. Let's just start and float. And there's some things you can customize here. A few things to also notice here. If you want this action to just go on forever, you would activate this toggle like a loop. So now if I start it, it will just continue to do this action over here. So I really encourage you to go and test out. There's many things you can do. Some of my favorite ones are in terms of what it does is, for example, you can play sounds, you can play ambience, you can the USDZ animation. So if you remember, our model had an animation. And if I start my scene with all the behaviors we added, it doesn't play that animation. And that's because you specifically need to go and do this and create as a trigger. So let's say we want to start that every time you start a scene. So I'll just go and scroll all the way down to USDZ animation. We need to select the object, and we'll just also make sure it's on the loop. So now if I start the project, you'll see it will also do the animation. I would want to go and show you much more things, but it's also a good prompt for you to go and try it out. There's a bunch of things you can do with the behaviors. You can combine them, you can put them all together, put different kind of models and do your experiences. And if you want to test out the live linking, all you have to do is, as I mentioned, install the Reality Composer on your device and click here on the Send To button and open up the app on your device, and you'll be able to do the live linking and test it out exactly from your device. Okay, I'll stop now. So let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you so much, Roxana, for presenting. That was an awesome talk, and I'm actually a very like an intro into AR, very noob in AR, so that was a great introduction for me as well. If anyone has any questions, feel free to leave them in the chat. And I have actually a couple of questions, Roxana, for you. Actually, my question was, is the part where you explained about the physics and the behaviors, is that the same thing, or is that something completely different, two separate, let's say, functionalities that you can use?
Yeah, so the physics, it's kind of like a property of your object. So it's, as I mentioned, for that, as I showed for that basketball, if I just say, okay, it does participate in physics, it does mimic this material, and it's just a property of that object, but behavior, it's something that it does. So in our case, maybe if I start the basketball and I started on the scene start, it will fall, it will bounce, but then I'll maybe add a behavior to it that if I push it or if I tap it, it will further
Oh, got it.
go away or do some other types of actions.
Got it. Got it. Okay, thank you so much. We have a couple of questions from Gabriel. What level of experience should a Swift programmer have to be able to start creating AR, VR apps, in your opinion?
I think you don't need to have like you don't need to be a senior or anything like that. You should have like some basic knowledge of iOS, but I just showed today that you can do this without any experience, and all you have to do, like you build it here, everything you wanted to do, and you'll have to go and just say export. And actually here in Property Finder, uh, in uh, in preferences, you just need to make sure that the enable USDZ export is selected. So you'll go and export it to actually like everything you build, including the behaviors, everything you put in here. You can again export it as a USDZ, and you just send this to your device. You can airdrop it, and then you already have the experience. So that's something to get started. You don't need to have any Swift knowledge or like iOS knowledge in terms of coding. Um, of course, if you want to get more into it, you'll be able to learn that.
Awesome, great. And another question is, a junior iOS developer can start creating apps basically just by learning ARKit?
Yeah, I would also say so. There are some really good starter projects by Apple. So if you go through their documentation, you can just download those and start looking around. And I would say you don't need to understand, what happens behind the scenes. Actually, AR development in iOS is really easy because the framework does a lot of the heavy lifting. So if you go and watch, I would also recommend watching the WWDC sessions on augmented reality because it really gives you enough for you to get started, no matter the level of your knowledge.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you, Roxana. And the final question so far is, of course, if you have any courses to recommend, any resources that you could maybe ping in the chat or that you could recommend to get started.
Yeah, definitely. I think again the best place to get started is with Apple's resources. Have a look at there, and I'll put all of this included into the resources list I will share. But have a look at the WWDC sessions they have. Go through their documentation, check out the sample projects. I believe somebody also mentioned Ray Wenderlich in the chat. They do have a book and they have articles as well. And I'm writing tutorials about iOS AR. So if you want to check that out, I'll put it in the resources as well.
I would like to thank Roxana for her awesome talk.
Thank you.